Welcome to the Mobile Home Park Mastery Podcast, where you will learn how to identify, evaluate, negotiate, perform due diligence on, finance, turn around, and operate mobile home parks. And now, here is your host, the fifth largest mobile home park owner in the United States, Frank Rolfe.
I am obsessed with recessions and depressions. I read everything I can find on the topic. I'm one of the few people out there who have read even 1,000-page treatises on the economics behind recessions and depressions, because I'm a skeptic. I'm a doomsdayer. I'm a pessimist. This is Frank Rolfe with the Mobile Home Park Mastery Podcast. We're talking about recessions and depressions, but more importantly, a mantra that you see throughout all of the publications and the analysis by economists of what happens in recessions and depressions. And basically, it leads to the general conclusion that going into any downturn in American history, there are only two things that work. One, necessities, things that people must have, and the other, vices. If you go back to the Great Depression, back in the 1930s, you found that there were two things that had higher sales during that time than any other time in American history. Number one were shoes. You had to have shoes. You were standing in long lines at the food kitchen. You were walking all over America trying to find work. You had to have a continual supply of shoes. Shoe manufacturers, therefore, did fantastic during the Depression. You also found that Americans during that period were much bigger drinkers because they had to forget their woes. Things weren't going well at all. They didn't have a job. They lost their family. They lost their hope in life. And the only way they could get through the day was to basically be intoxicated. Now, St. Louis did extremely well during the Depression. And that's because in St. Louis, they were able to say, first in shoes and first in booze. That was their proud declaration through the Chamber of Commerce of St. Louis during the period, because the Brown Shoe Company, the largest shoe manufacturer in America, was located in St. Louis, and their revenue was off the charts during the Depression. And then, of course, you had alcohol production by plants such as Budweiser, based out of St. Louis, providing the booze side. Now, if you look at all of the other recessions and depressions in modern history, you'll see the same thing. When times get bad, people only buy things they have to have. All the luxuries go out the door. And or they buy things they really shouldn't buy because it's the only way they can cope. Back when I had my billboard business, during the Texas savings and loan crash, the only consistent advertiser that I could get on a billboard were topless bars. Because topless bars were places that people went back in the 80s to forget life. Because when things were so bad they couldn't bear to go home, and they didn't have a job to go to an office, they didn't know where to go. And they would often go to that large, endless chain of topless bars that Texas had. So if we all agree that necessities and vices are pretty much where it's at, because they are, when times get bad, how do you invest in those? Well, let's start off with vices. Personally, I don't invest in any vices. I know there are people out there who've been telling me in recent times, oh, you need to invest in marijuana farms. I can't. I don't believe in it. Never tried marijuana, never desire to, don't know anyone who does, and I just don't want to support products that I don't personally like. I mean, I'm virtually a Carrie Nation when it comes to drinking. I don't like the concept of people drinking. I don't drink, and I've never liked it. So therefore, I really can't invest in vices. It's just not going to work for me as a lifestyle choice. So then that leaves necessities. Now, how do you invest in a necessity? Well, to invest in a necessity, you have to find certain niches of American life, which we all have to have. Now, we all have to eat, that's for sure. So, hey, let's all just invest in food. But the problem is, when you look at investing in food, most of the food you can invest in is a luxury. If you say, hey, I'm going to invest in Chipotle because I really like their burritos, well, that's great. But you know what, Chipotle, that's not where you go when you run out of money. That's not where poor people go to eat. Where do poor people go to eat? Well, they go directly to the source and cook it themselves, basically go and buy the actual food. So the only way you can really be in the most stable parts of food is to be a farmer. And that's probably why you see Bill Gates has overnight become the largest private owner of farmland in the US. But farmland investing is very, very low return. I live in the Missouri Ozarks, and farming here is a big, big deal. There are farms here so large that they have their own 18-wheelers, their own large equipment. But it's a tough way to make a living. Now, Bill Gates can make money off of his farming, I guess, because he has so many acres. But for the average person, investing in farming, in food production, would be nearly impossible. So the necessity I like is housing. I think that people have to have housing because they do. And if I'm going to be in housing, I want to be on the low end of housing. I want to be in the Dollar Tree of housing. I want to be in the Dollar General of housing. I want to be in housing that everyone has to have, and it's the most affordable type imaginable. And that's why I ended up in mobile home parks and remain in mobile home parks, because I like being in things that you got to have that are really, really inexpensive. I don't want to be the luxury side of housing. I know people who have. I know someone who actually owns and rents houses in Nashville to country western stars. It's a niche they created, but that would terrify me because that is the ultimate luxury upon luxury. And I don't have any confidence in things that people don't really need. But people really, really need affordable housing. So as a result, it's my opinion that you're going to find that mobile home parks will do exceedingly well in the recession or depression, whatever it's going to be that's forthcoming. Most economists predict we're going to have our next recession or depression in America sometime between now and the end of 2024. And I would agree with that statement. If you look how long it's been since our last recession, the Great Recession of 2007, 2008, it's been way too many years. Based on typical recessions and the cycle, we should have had a major recession back in, I don't know. It would have already been really long if we'd had it by 2018. But here we are 5 years later, basically, and we still haven't had the big recession. We had a slight one during COVID, but you can't really count that because it snapped right back. So if the economists are correct, and we're going to have the next big recession and or depression coming up between now and the end of next year, then how do you prepare for that? Well, you can't invest in vices. At least I don't think you can. I don't know how you would do that. I'm morally completely opposed to it. But you can get involved in necessities. You still have the opportunity and the ability to invest in affordable housing via mobile home parks. It's definitely worth a shot. It's worth the investigation to figure out if that would work for you. Now, I don't have any confidence in any of these other investments we have in America. I believe, like most economists, when the recession depression finally hits, the stock market is going to go down the drain. It'll probably lose in a very quick fashion, maybe 20% of value, maybe more. And I don't really have much confidence in the bond markets. And I don't think if we have a recession depression, you're going to be able to get 4% yields on CDs anymore. I don't think Jerome Powell will be able to keep interest rates high. Typically, in most recession depressions of the past, interest rates have dropped around 2.5 points from the start of the recession to the end. That being the case, you're going to see those CD yields drop back down somewhere between where they were at 0.25 and the 4 to 5% that you have today. Meanwhile, I don't think you'll see any cure to inflation, which still seems to be chugging along about 4 or 5%. So if you're going to invest going forward, facing the Great Depression, recession, knowing you have to battle and beat 5% or so in inflation, and you can't do it in traditional channels of the stock market or bond market, then really the only option is alternative investing. So where do I think you need to be for the next recession, depression? You need to be in some form of alternative investing that focuses on necessities. And again, the one that I prefer is the mobile home park industry. But if you find a different way that you can invest in the lower end of the housing market, then you definitely need to go do that, because that's the only safety and security you will have when things get really, really bad, are necessities and vices. This is Frank Roth, Mobile Home Park Mastery Podcast. Hope you enjoyed this. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Mobile Home Park Mastery Podcast. Be sure to visit us at mhpmastery.com to subscribe to the show, read our show transcriptions, and access all of our great information on mobile home park investing.